Ms. Beverin, let's begin with you. You may have 3 minutes to give introductory comments.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all for coming out today. I'm Ms. Samara Beverin, your 18th District Kentucky State Representative. I was born and raised in Litchfield, where I now live with my golden retriever, Rosie. She just turned 1 yesterday, so of course we had to have a celebration. I am a proud graduate of Western Kentucky University, and I've spent the last several years serving the great people of the Commonwealth in Washington, D.C. and Frankfort, Kentucky. Now, I wish I could have been here sooner campaigning, but I've been in Frankfort doing the job the good people of the 18th District sent me there to do. I'm working hard for you, and I'm bringing back real results. This past session, I listened to the people of the 18th District and voted in support of tax reform. This would start to eliminate the state income tax in Kentucky, and this means more of your hard-earned money going back in your pocket. Public assistance reform. It's time to get people back to work who are able to be working. Unemployment insurance reform. The pro-life omnibus bill. Laws that strengthen our religious liberties, and a budget that provides record-level funding for public education, pay raises for state workers, and fully funds the required amount for the pensions. Just this session, I've helped bring over I've helped bring $60 million, since 2019 over $110 million in road funding for safer roads to your families, to fix potholes and keep your vehicles in alignment. $10 million to the Grayson County Tech School, and over $2 million to the Hardin County Tech School. I'm a big believer in technical education programs, and I've proved that with the funding. $9 million to expand the ECTC Litchfield campus to allow easier access for classes for students, which helps our local campus here, and $16.5 million for the occupational building at ECTC, which will help modernize their program capabilities for people right here in our community. We deserve to let someone who can get things done in Frankfort and has a proven record to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Good evening. Sorry to be late. I was working a little overtime in anticipation of my opponent passing her gas tax increase, saving up money for that higher gas. My name is Jacob Clark, born and raised in Grayson County, been married 21 years to my high school sweetheart, got 3 beautiful teenage children, and just recently got a daughter-in-law. I love them all dearly. I want them to grow up in a free country. Growing up, it was my Mayberry. Over the last couple of years, we've seen, our rights erode. We've seen our crazy governor come along and try to assert an authority that he does not possess, to shut down businesses, to shut down churches. And all the while we see our elected officials, who are supposed to be the ones defending us from these things, sitting on their hands in Frankfort. They didn't miss a paycheck, while many people lost their jobs, their livelihoods, and their way of life forever. So when parents are not allowed to voice their concerns with the school boards about ungodly curriculum, mask mandates, when our grandchildren are no longer have the right to refuse an experimental drug, when an evil governor finds more loopholes to restrict worship and keep abortion clinics busy, when we learn again that we are funding abortion doctors who perform abortions for cash on the side, all the road funding in the world will not redeem our freedom. What would all these things matter if we don't retain our liberty? When we finally realized that our silence and compliance was being purchased all along, I humbly ask for your vote on May 17. Let's get back to the Constitution. My name is Jacob Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. You can stand up there. You'll get the first question. You have up to 2 minutes to respond. Right. The question is, and you've already alluded to this, what is your position on mandates for vaccines?
Mandates for vaccines. Okay. We are in the land of the free last time I checked, and there is no condition where we should be discussing if the government can force you to get stabbed or not. I don't understand how this got to be a thing, but there's no condition, way, shape, or form when the government should be able to mandate vaccines. Joe Biden's vaccine mandate was going through the land, and we had a great bill to make sure that people would not have to take that vaccine, HB28. It was on the books for like 8 months, and my opponent rushed into a committee to make sure that they could amend that bill that it would only protect public employees and not private employees. And so that would cover her, but not you, all these private employees. So if we're going to err, people say we need the businesses to have liberty to do what they want to do, and I get that. But if we're going to err, we should err on the side of individual liberty for the person. You should get to choose that. And these companies aren't held liable. The vaccine manufacturers are not held liable. So it's just a free-for-all. If you have an adverse reaction to this vaccine, it's just tough. So I definitely oppose vaccine mandates and would do whatever it takes to make that decision up to the smallest minority, which is the individual.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. You have a seat. Ms. Hebron, you had the same question. What is your position on mandates for vaccines?
Thank you. I do not believe that people should be mandated to get vaccinations. I did vote on House Bill 28 this past session that would protect public employees for doing that. And what the amendment did, I want to correct the record, what the amendment did, it took out private universities. From that, after talking to the bill sponsor, she agreed that since they were private universities, do not get any public funding, that they should not have that same requirement. I think it's up to you to get vaccinated. I think it's up to your children. It's up to the parents if they should vaccinate their children or not. So I do not believe in vaccine mandates. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hebron, you can stay at the podium. If I remember, I'm going to try to alternate who's first and who's second. The next question is, do you support medical cannabis with regulations for sick and suffering citizens of your community? That is, do you support medical cannabis with regulations for sick and suffering citizens of your community?
Thank you for that question. Yes, I do. Since being elected in 2019, in 2020 was my first session, and I voted yes on supporting medical cannabis. And in 2021 session and 2022 session, I co-sponsored the legislation. I've been a big advocate for that because that's something my district, in the 18th district, which includes all of Grayson County and part of Hardin County, has really talked about a lot. We have a child named Baby Colby in Grayson County, and I've sat and talked with her parents. And, I think that my job as a state legislator is to listen to the people and what they want. And so I've listened to the 18th district, and I have supported it, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, the second question. The question is, do you support medical cannabis with regulations for sick and suffering citizens of your community?
Okay, that's an easy one, and Ms. Hebron and I will pretty much agree perfectly on this one. It's a plant. Right now we have people all across our country, really, but definitely in our district, they're suffering from one thing or another. And over the last couple of years, as conservatives, if you haven't started to lose some of your trust for the big pharmaceutical companies, you probably haven't been paying attention. But if we can help a young mother, like the one she mentioned, if we can help a young mother stop her baby from having seizures with a plant, and we're going to call ourselves, patriots and citizens of a free country, I don't see any reason why we're having that discussion as well. It should be pretty easy. I'm not going to drag on, but I definitely support medical cannabis. I actually held my son when he was a baby. He had seizures, about 150 seizures during one night. Thank God it was just febrile due to a fever, so it was a one-time thing. But I can't imagine that there would be a judge in the land that could tell me that I could not make that stop with a plant. So, yes.
The question is, do you have a community service background? If so, please list what you have done to help the community and local citizens of the community.
Okay, this one's hard for me because I don't believe in bragging on yourself or anything like that. So I'll just brag on God. I've been a Baptist minister for about 12 years now, ordained missionary Baptist, and the Lord has helped me to really see need and be able to go and help people. We've had folks come and live with us from time to time. When the pandemic began, there were some people that were trying to get into the government housing, and things got froze on them. We let those people move in with us, and it was definitely a challenge and a heavy load on our family. But we were glad to be able to do that. Every time we thought that we were going to run out of resources or something would come along and fill that void. And so we've had a couple of families that have stayed with us over the years. But I've been active in the churches around my district. A lot of folks, that's where they know me from. And then I've done a jail ministry for about 3.5 years now, working mostly with addicts. And that's where I really got an education on the opioid epidemic that we have. It's incredibly sad that there are people out there, these tormented souls, who are going through these things. And so I'm trying to do my best to help them, but I would like to reiterate that I'm not going to brag on me, just brag on the Lord has been able to lead me around and help me do these things. And I'm going to depend on Him to help me in Frankfurt as well.
Thank you. Ms. Hebron, the same question. Do you have a community service background? If so, please list what you have done to help community and local citizens of the community.
So I've been very actively involved in my community. In 2017, I started what is called Politics and Pancakes after I was chosen to be the youth chair for the Grayson County Republican Party. And what this does is it brings local, federal, and local, state, federal candidates to Grayson County for a breakfast. And it allows candidates to come in and speak and share their platform. And I think what's really important is I wanted people to know who they're voting for and why they're voting for them. So it gives people an opportunity to come and visit Grayson County and to share their ideals. I am also very actively involved in the Grayson County Alliance, which is our food pantry in Grayson County. You can see me helping there on many days when they're doing deliveries. And I also, on the Owensboro Health Foundation board, I'm a proud member helping out our healthcare community. And I also really, since being elected, I think you become a lot more involved in community, talking to different groups. But I think that's really the base of being an elected official, is being able to have relationships and talk to all the different groups in your community, and being out there and being visible, having transparency, because if you're not hearing what the community wants you to do, you're not doing a very good job. So I think having community relations is very important. I'm proud to be an actively engaged member.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. The next question is for you. What plans do you have for future legislation and action if you are elected? What plans do you have for future legislation and action if you are elected?
So I always like to hear from my district what legislation comes up in what areas. Each year is so different. In 2019 and 2020, no one expected that we'd be spending the next several months and years working on COVID. And how to work that over in the community and across the state. And so something, I'm actively engaged in is child care. That is something very passionate. I'm very interested in workforce participation. Now with Glendale coming, which is now in the 18th district, there's a lot to that. And so I'm already starting to work with community members and elected officials to hear what they need. And one of that is the road plan, and see how we can make sure to get things taken care of there for better, more economic development opportunities and safer travels for the people in Glendale. So I think there are a lot of things that we can work on. Workforce participation, continuing to lower taxes, and listening to the people is what I will do. But I think a really big focus for this district, the 18th district, will be working on Glendale and seeing what we can do to help members and be an advocate for the people there.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, you have the same question. What plans do you have for future legislation and action if you are elected?
All right. So these are good ones. I got so many. One thing is they've already started the ball rolling on getting rid of the income tax. And the plan they have to do that, my state senator speculated it would take about 10 years, which means it would probably take about 20 years, and speculated that we'd have to have about 2 million people to Kentucky which took 90 years to add the last 2 million people to Kentucky. And this is due to the fact they want to get rid of the income tax, but yet the overall annual revenue needs to go up about 48%, I believe. So this is a great idea to eliminate the income tax, and people, they really perk up when you say that, but I'm not so sure that we'll be able to hit the earmarks there, and I'm definitely not sure they will actually lighten the tax burden on the taxpayers. So I want to eliminate the income tax on your overtime pay. So I've worked 60 hours, 70 hours a week in factories, programming machines, doing prototyping and things like that. And, you don't work overtime because government needs more money and you want to help them out. You work it because you have a mortgage that's due. So I want to eliminate the income tax on overtime pay, give people more right now. We can do that right now instead of 20 years. And then I also want to expand the Homestead Act, which is for the elderly and the property taxes, in such a way that it would eliminate the possibility that an elderly person that's already paid for their home could lose their home for property tax delinquency. So there's just a couple of things that I'd like to do.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, you can stay there for the next question. The question is, what do you consider to be your greatest strength, and what is your greatest weakness? What do you consider to be your greatest strength, and what do you consider to be your greatest weakness?
Okay. Wow, that's kind of philosophical, right? My greatest strength, I guess, would be being open-minded. I might totally disagree with someone, but I can sit there and have open discussion with them, evaluate their reasoning. I might even see their logic and how they arrive at their conclusion, and that doesn't mean I want to walk away and have bent my ideas at all, but we have to get back to that. We can't go on with this, being so treacherous to those we disagree with, this lashing out these things. It doesn't mean we have to bend, but anyway, I think that's one of my strengths is being open-minded, being able to evaluate all the information logically without emotion attached. And my weakness. Wow. My weakness. I guess it would be taking on too many things at once, wearing too many hats. Built a company from scratch, and it done really well, overwhelmed me quickly. I sold that company out. I'm in the middle of transferring that to the new owners, and got all that going on, and then silly enough to try to run a campaign as well, but we're just about finished up with that, and I'll be able to dedicate a lot of time to serving the people.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Just having the same question for you. What do you consider to be your greatest strength, and what do you consider to be your greatest weakness?
That is a very good question. I think one of my greatest strengths is building relationships with people. I think that's one of the most important jobs. Whenever I was in Washington, D.C., I like to bring groups together and see what we can all find that we have in common. When I was in D.C. as a scheduler, I brought all the Kentucky schedulers together for a monthly lunch, and I brought all the U.S. Senate schedulers together for a monthly lunch. Because I think whenever we're able to have conversations and really get to know each other and understand where we're all coming from, it makes the world a difference, especially in politics, when there's so much negativity out there. I think when you can build relationships and get to know people for who they really are, it changes the game. And so I think that's one of my strengths, and I think that's something I've really worked hard to do, is build relationships with community members and community leaders across Grayson and Hardin counties. And I've always been like that since I was growing up. I'm thankful for parents who put that, instilled that in me, that relationships matter, and that even if you think you're never going to see someone again, they could pop up and be your boss or your colleague someday. But one of my greatest weaknesses is I have very little time for lies and false narratives. And I think that's a very interesting thing to say is my weakness with being in politics, but we see that frankly every day. And among people in all the races that are on the ballot this year. And so I have very little patience for lies and false narratives. I don't know. I'd say that's probably a strength, actually, but it is probably a weakness in politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hardin. You get the first bite at the next question as well. This is the question. If the majority of your constituents support an issue that you personally oppose, or if the majority of your constituents oppose an issue that you support, how will you make decisions on which way to vote? Do I need to repeat the question?
Nope. This is another great question. You all had lots of great questions tonight. You know, I'm not there to represent Samara Hebron and the ideas I believe. I'm there to represent the 18th District and the ideas that they believe. And so, you know, when I first got elected, I had a lot of questions about medical marijuana or medical cannabis, as we referred to earlier. And that's something I wasn't for. And I had conversations, I kept an open mind, and I heard from my district, and especially with the fiscal court in Grayson County passing a resolution to support that, I recognized that that was something my district wanted. And so I ended up doing that. I supported the legislation, and I've become an advocate for that. Whenever we're on the floor, we're not recognized as Representative Hebron or, you know, Representative Bratcher or Representative, you know, whoever it is. You're recognized as a lady or gentleman from your county, and so I'm named the lady from Grayson, and I take that into huge respect when making decisions for the people of the 18th District.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, you have the same question, and that is, if the majority of your constituents support an issue you oppose or oppose an issue you support, how will you decide which way to vote?
All right. Well, the first thing we do is consult the Constitution. So it must be about individual liberty. We are not a democracy. We are actually a republic. And that means that the smallest minority, being the individual, has rights that cannot be discarded by government. So a good example would be, let's say that 329,999,000 Americans decided they do not want any more guns, but one American says, yeah, we would still like to have gun rights. In America, that's not a democracy, we still get gun rights. So that's the difference in America and what some people think it is, honestly. But first we consult the Constitution and make sure that we protect an individual rights, but definitely hearing constituents and answering them. That's one thing that I've heard over and over as I go talking to people is they only get an answer from the representative if it's some kind of easy softball, that they never get an answer to the hard questions about vaccine mandates and all these things. What do you think about CRT in our schools? Things like that. So definitely would be consulting the people of the 18th District as long as it checks out with the Constitution. And there are many things, many life choices that people make that I would disagree with, but I want to win those people through Christ, through the church, instead of trying to legislate moralities.
Thank you. We only have time left for our closing statements. So, Ms. Hebron, you may go first. Closing statements, you can use up to 3 minutes.
Since being elected in 2019, I've championed legislation that has benefited our veterans and military personnel, families who choose adoption, scholarship funding for apprenticeship programs, and middle-income families struggling with the cost of child care. But Ford and SK Battery coming to Glendale, the 18th District deserves someone who has a voice at the table and strong relationships with community leaders as we build our future for the next generation. If re-elected, I will continue to work hard for the community that has molded me as I've grown up. I will be a strong conservative voice for the 18th District. We deserve someone who can get things done in Frankfort and has a proven record that shows it. I truly believe that the best is yet to come for us in the 18th District. I would be honored to have your vote this upcoming primary election and continue to be your voice in Frankfort. It's a privilege of a lifetime. I'm also happy to announce that I'm the only candidate endorsed by the Right to Life, Kentucky Right to Life. I have a strong pro-life voting record in the Kentucky NRA. I've also been endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce for my active legislation on helping small businesses in the business community in Kentucky. And I have been a registered Republican since the day I turned 18. But you look at me, and I wanted to put on the record that that was 12 years ago, even though I look a little young. So please, I would be honored to have your vote on May 17th in the primary. Y'all, let's keep Hebron in the house.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, closing statement.
like I said, we need to get back to the Constitution. All the road funding in the world, all these relationships, don't help a lot when your gas taxes go up and things like that. There's been some pro-life legislation that's kind of used in election years. There was Senate Bill 9 sat in the House for 2.5 months in 2020 after it took them only about 3 or 4 days to kick it out of the Senate. This sat in the House for 2.5 months from January 27th until April 15th. And they finally passed it on the last day. And then, of course, Governor Beshear vetoes it. And, I can't say that it wasn't set up, but it sure looked like it. He vetoes it, and they say, oh, elect us in November, and we'll fix this. We'll set it right. And then we've seen, this year we have this good pro-life bill. It just happens to be an election year. And the governor smacks it down again with his Franklin court judge buddy. So, these stunts happen. I'm endorsed by the Abolish Abortion Political Action Committee. It's a national political action committee dedicated not to just, band-aiding these issues. We want to see it gone. We want to quit funding it. There's many loopholes that are used to fund these things. HB 99 in 2020 was passed, even as the Family Foundation was looking into ties with this institution and EMW in Louisville, and they went ahead and passed, gave them $35 million. It was my opponent voted for it when it was $50 million, but the Senate amended it. It was $35 million that went to this place, and they can do their job and enjoy tax-funded facility over here and go to EMW and perform abortions. As long as they get paid with different money, with cash or what have you, then it's okay. These are loopholes and things that we've got to fix. We need amendments on bills. We need stipulations set in there that if they employ people who practice such things, that they can't have taxpayer funding. You don't want, those good people, we don't want to be paying for these things. So, and I also have an A rating with the NRA as well.
Ms. Everett and Mr. Clark, thank you very much. That concludes the first part of the candidate.